So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jane Morgan, and thank you for joining us today for the Challenger Exploration Investor Webinar. Today, I'm joined by our Managing Director, Chris Canal, who will run through the investor presentation, which was lodged with the ASX this afternoon, followed by a Q&A session. To ask a question throughout today's presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Chris, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Jane, and I'd like to welcome all shareholders. What we'll do is probably a 20-minute run through, and then we'll sort of look at Q&A and work through all the questions we've got, of which there are quite a few. So look, quick update. Challenger, South American focused, 2.8 million ounce resource in our lead project in Waliland. That was announced about a week ago. Significant upgrade, and now a nice high-grade core of over 1.5 million ounces at 5. In Ecuador, we sit next to a 17 million ounce ore body. I think the intercepts there speak for themselves. We think we've got the other half of that system, and a first resource due in May, I think, will give the market an understanding. Corporately, probably the keys there are, look, management own 22% of the company. Myself, Sergio Rotondo, our chairman, company secretary, have some serious skin in the game. So when the share price goes down, it hurts us more than it hurts you. And we're making decisions to try and improve the share price. We're not sitting here trying to protect a big salary. We don't have one. It's all about the share price. Current market cap about 175 million Oz. Cash as we end this quarter should be around $8 million. And look, the burn's been done now. We've gone from 9 rigs in Argentina to 1. We've gone from 2 rigs in Ecuador to finishing the program. We're down to spending $3 to $4 million a quarter, probably more at the 3 end. So we're under no pressure. We've got a 7 to 8 month runway in front of us. Just a bit, and I've been asked a lot by shareholders, what happened? Why did the price fall from 35 cents down to as low as 11? So what I've done is I've got the share price over the last 3 years, and I've got some key events. So you roll through to December 2020. I think that was when we put out 110 meters at 3. That was the first time the market had realized how big a project Waliland could be. Some positive first metallurgical results, and we were awarded for that. We then raised $42 million at 28 cents, and unfortunately, only 2 funds stuck around, which was BlackRock and Regal, and we had a big sell-off down to 24. Some high-grade results turned that around. You roll through to the end of 21, we basically got first Ecuador drilling results out. I think the market then realized that Ecuador's a big system. And we then sort of roll into the middle of 2022, and we get into this falling gold price environment. Gold price fell from 2,000 down to as low as 1,600. Unfortunately, we put out a 2.1 million ounce resource in the middle of that. We told the market 2 million ounce resource or larger. We delivered that, and we got sold off. We unfortunately came out into a situation where unless you were beating expectations by 50%, you were getting punished. We then traded along around 18 cents, and then we get to this period where I think it's irrational. So we've had the gold price start to turn around. Challenger didn't sort of rally up with a lot of the other bigger gold stocks. You had some shareholders start to wonder what was wrong. I mean, I had people saying, well, is the company going broke? Are you going to lose the deposit? We got into a stage where fear takes over. You couple that with the fact we started a roadshow around PDAC, and learnings from that are, I'll never do an international roadshow around PDAC. Every mining company in the world is trying to do a roadshow. The investors have investor fatigue. You've got BMO conference. You had site visits after BMO that took just about every analyst out of action. And what happened there was 2 weeks into the roadshow, share price hadn't gone up, and you had wholesale panic, mainly with retail investors, which is unfortunate. We then put out a 2.8 million ounce resource, and I think there was a great sigh of relief. Oh, project actually is good. It's a quality asset. So you see us now, we're basically trading at, I think, 16.5 cents today. So we've bounced nicely off the bottom. The project is in Argentina. Argentina has had all kinds of problems, 100% inflation there really in the last 4 or 5 months. A change in government in September will fix that. And we've had a lot of the UK funds have said, look, love the story. We'll take a really good look at you upon a change in government in September. So, that's part of the challenge we've got. The average gold developer right now in Australia is trading at $110 an ounce. If this project was 100 kilometres out of Kalgoorlie, right now we'd be trading in the mid-20s to high 20s. We're not, we're in Argentina. We've just got to basically wait out until the elections finish, educate the market that, look, San Juan is one of the top-rated mining jurisdictions in South America, and also get an Ecuador resource out, which I think will finally get some value for that. So in terms of milestones you've got to look forward to, we bought the land. We had to. We paid $2 million for it. That land covers all the project and infrastructure. Had we not bought that land, and to be honest, this was just pure luck, they passed a law a week after we bought the land that you can't actually lodge an EIA or get mining approval unless you own that land. So if we'd have waited another week, that land wouldn't have cost us $2 million, it would cost us $20 million. So in terms of go forward, as of 2 months ago, when we sort of, started dropping the rig count, we've split the exploration team up into a northern and southern group. They've been out mapping along strike 2 to 4 Ks north and south, looking for regional targets. We've now got the first batch of rock chip samples through. You'll get a look at what that looks like this quarter. And then you start to get some news out on some of these, where do we find another Wallilan? Scoping study due the end of this second quarter, and we'll roll straight into a pre-feas. Having said that, if we can roll straight into a bankable, we'll do that. Ecuador, almost 99% complete the drilling program now. Maiden resource due in May. And I think that resource will be the point where we finally get some value for Ecuador. And look, if we don't, we've had some preliminary discussions with Canadian brokers about spinning that off. There's an asset there of value and it's got to pay for itself. One way or the other, we'll get some value for Ecuador. I won't go into this too much, just suffice to say, you can see the trend there. The green is the high grade, the yellow is the lower grade mineralization. You can see that line of hills that extends to the top of the page, another 3 or 4 Ks, same thing. To the bottom of the page, we've now got some interesting grades, 4 kilometres north, a couple of kilometres south. Wallilan is a long way from being drilled out, still open in all directions and will get bigger. And I'll talk to, what we did with the drilling a little bit later. The resource, so 2.8 million ounce resource. The best way to look at this resource is you take our 2022 resource. It was 2.1 million ounces at 1.4 grams gold. You take the best 2.1 million ounces or the highest grade 2.1 million ounces in the current resource, it's 2.1 million ounces at 3.1. So we've more than doubled the grade of that top 2 million ounces. So we've now got a quality project, nice high grades. Importantly, 70% of that resource is in indicated category. And you've also got some serious flexibility. You look at it, on the right is the grade cutoff distribution at $2,000, $2,100 gold. It's probably a big open pit with 2.8 million ounces at 1.3, 1.4 grams gold equivalent. At $1,500, $1,600 gold, it's a 1.6 million ounce deposit at 5 grams and a very nice, simple high grade underground. Still is open in all directions. You can see some of the intercepts there. And I've got a couple of slides that show that. This just shows the grade distribution. There are high grades at surface there. So we've got starter pit options. And if you have a look, the high grades are the pink and red, and a lot of the high grades are all grouped together. So, it also is, you don't have too much underground development, it doesn't look like as well, but that'll be covered in the scoping study. Section showing you what I mean. So this is the sort of current resource. You can see here hole 711, deepest hole we've drilled on the Verde zone, intersected 42 meters at almost 6 grams, mineralization open below it, and significantly higher grades in that hole than the holes up dip of that. So that's the style of thing we're seeing here. Having said that, we're at the point now where we got this resource to 2.8 million ounces with 90,000 meters of drilling. Half of that was infill. That did cost us ounces. If we'd have spent the entire 90,000 meters extension drilling, I have no doubt we'd be sitting here with a resource of 3.2 million ounces. However, it would all be inferred, and we'd have another $7 to $8 million worth of drilling before we could do anything with that in terms of run a scoping study, get some economics out, run into a pre-feas. So we had to make the hard decision that, look, we're going to turn half of this drill budget into infill so that we've actually got a resource that we can progress towards production. Otherwise, when that resource came out, we'd have needed to raise $10 million at whatever the price was. Wouldn't have been pretty, to actually then advance that resource to a point where more than half was in indicated category and we could physically do something with it. But look, the fact that we turned around and did a lot of infill definitely cost us ounces. Wallilar's still open and will get bigger. I'll just talk about the footprint here. So orange is us, blue is Newmont. You can see the outline of the ground that we purchased there. We bought 20,000 hectares. So we now own the land that covers 8 kilometres north, south, east and west. All of the project infrastructure will go on that land. It just makes all approvals so much easier. The other reason we've got this 600 square kilometre footprint is you simply don't find 3 million ounce ore bodies by themselves. I mean, the best place to find a mine is near a mine. And, up until now, the surrounds of Wallilar have been totally unexplored. And, just to talk to that, so what I'm showing you here on the right is the zoomed in version. The pink is a big intrusive complex at depth. It's the engine that created Wallilar. What you've got is at depth, this hot body with all these hot fluids carrying gold, silver in it. It comes up, and at the edges of that, you drop the gold out into the sedimentary rocks. And what you can see there is the current 2.8 million ounces wraps around the western side of this circular anomaly. The other 2/3 of that totally undercover. We haven't had a chance to explore it. We've been chasing 9 rigs. We now get a chance to look at that. And if you step back and look at our tenement or part of our tenement proper, there's not just one of these engines for Wallilar. There's another 5 or 6 of those. They're all there marked in pink. Number 3 there, outcrops. It's exactly the same age and same type of intrusives that created Wallilar. Same thing for number 5 there down at the bottom of the page. We've got some 10 and 20 gram material at surface at number 3. Don't know where it goes yet, but we have it. Number 5 is interesting looking alteration as well. The way to think about this is around those engines, we've got 25 kilometres of prospective strike. At Wallilar, we've got 2.8 million ounces over 2.5 kilometres of strike. Now, it's not going to be everywhere, but that's a tremendous opportunity. 25 kilometres, basically totally unexplored apart from the 3 kilometres where Wallilar is. You walk 4 k's north, there's old workings in the hills. Same thing, you walk, a kilometre south, there's old workings in the hills. We know it's mineralised. We've just been too busy to go look for it. So as I said, we've now split the team up into a northern and southern team. They've been out there mapping and taking samples for the last 2 months. In a perfect world, I'd actually do what De Grey have done and get 3 or 4 air core rigs in and build a regional geochemical map. Unfortunately, you can't get air core rigs in Argentina. We may well actually look at importing some later. But, the chances of finding another Wallilar, or there'll be another Wallilar there somewhere. I just hope that we're still in control of the project and we haven't been taken over by the time we find it. Quickly on El Guabo in Ecuador, which I think will soon add value. So I'm showing you a snapshot of the project. On the right is a plan view map. You can see that box, that's Lumina Gold's Canrecos project, 17 million ounces at 0.6 of a gram gold, waiting on a pre-feasibility study. They're listed on the TSX, trading at about 180 million Aussie. We've got 15 regional anomalies that look exactly the same as the footprint of Canrecos. We've drilled 14 of these, 7 of them are discoveries with more than 500 metres of mineralisation. Where we are now is we're focusing on our 100% owned ground there in the circle. And we're drilling up basically the main discovery zone, which is the A anomaly, and the B anomaly, which is the gold block. Yeah, that A anomaly has got a nice high-grade zone there in yellow in it. They're both big systems. We've now extended the strike to 900 metres on the A anomaly, and it now looks like it's at least 500 metres wide. And in the middle here, these two, the A and B anomaly, look like they're joining and it's one big zone of mineralisation. I'll just quickly go to it in plan view. This is showing you the high grade zone and the main A anomaly. You can see the core there in the left. It's pretty impressive stuff. We've got a hole in there that went 50 meters at 5. It's a coherent zone, 250 meters long, circular, subvertical. It's a pipe body that hopefully has 20 million tons of high grade material in there. And we also see something similar on the B anomaly. This is showing you a section of the A anomaly and the B anomaly across both. On the A anomaly, we're actually north of where the high grade zone is, but what I'm showing you is this hole we announced this morning, almost 1.2 kilometers of mineralization from surface to the end of the hole. That actually, the top half of that hole was between the A and B anomaly. You can see hole 23, I think it is, that basically was also drilled in the middle. It was mineralized. And then hole 24 here, which got 108 meters at 2.4 or 54 meters at 4 in the B anomaly, that actually sits directly below an historical hole. We've got 150 meters at 3. So this B anomaly also has this discrete high grade zone in it as well, that, like the A anomaly, outcrops its surface. And then just to sort of scale, I'm showing you a plan view here of our 50% owned ground in the north, where we're in a joint venture at Colorado B. Key takeaway here is basically almost 2 years ago, based on the historical drilling, we wrapped some exploration targets around those two anomalies, exploration targets on each of 4 to 6 million ounces. We've now done a bunch of drilling on these two anomalies, not enough drilling to generate a resource, but certainly enough drilling to know what's there and what it's going to look like. And that drilling has done nothing but support those 4 to 6 million ounce exploration targets. So, we've got a significant opportunity here in El Guabo as well. And I think really the key is probably not how big this first resource is. Is that high grade core there? Is it more than 1 million ounces? Because if we've got that high grade core of 1 million ounces plus, it's got the potential to make the 17 million ounces that Lumina hold in Cangrejos much more economic, because you have a deposit where you're treating 0.5 gram material. If you can get 1 gram material through the mill for the first 2 years, you produce double the amount of gold, you pay it back in half the time. You take a project that's marginal to a project that's very economic. Look, to wrap up, valuations, milestones, what we've done is we've been given a bunch of questions. Jane's been kind enough to email me the ones we had as of last night. So what I might do is just work through these one after the other, and then we'll go and see if there are any additional questions that have come through. So first question, price of CEL sold off 72% from the highs of 39. Over that time, the gold price has increased 13%. Additionally, we've spent a lot of time and money, produced a 2.1 million ounce resource. Basically, please explain on what's happened to the share price. Now, again, I went through this. It's unfortunate, and believe you me, it hurts me a lot more than it hurts shareholders. Unfortunately, what has happened is we put out this first resource into a market where the gold price was falling. There was zero interest in gold. This time 18 months ago was a wonderful time to be a gold explorer. You had all the generalist funds desperate for gold exposure. We've had a consistently falling gold price. We got to the point where we were putting out good news and the share price kept falling, which created panic amongst the retail shareholders. Also hasn't helped that I think we've got some shorts in the market as well. What was particularly unhelpful was one of the meetings I had when I was over doing a US roadshow with a US fund who said, look, love the stock at 15 cents, but we're not going to participate in the placement. Placements at the moment are basically coming in and trading below the placement price. We're going to buy it in the market. And of course, my look was a bit dumbfounded, was what placement are you talking about? So there've been some brokers over there trying to solicit interest. Certainly we're given no instructions from us. And I think you've seen some shorting on the back of that as well. And unfortunately, it's the retail shareholders who panicked out at 11 cents. We've got this resource out now, which has stabilized it. I think the market's realized it is a quality asset, and hopefully that Ecuador resource, and then probably more importantly, the economics around Hualilan will do a lot to basically turn around sentiment. As I said, I think we should be trading in the mid-20s, and we would be if we were, our asset was in Kalgoorlie, not in Argentina. How much more drilling do we need to do to get to 3 million ounces? Again, we rolled 45,000 meters into infill. Had we not done that, we'd have been north of 3 million ounces, but we'd have been sitting there with a resource we couldn't do anything with unless we spent another $8 or $9 million on it. And the market would have known that, and it would have been painful. But look, it's open in all directions. It's going to get bigger, but I don't think spending another $7 or $8 million drilling another 45,000 meters to get it to 3.2 million ounces is going to add much more value. I think now it's time to move it towards production and actually get some dividends to shareholders and explore from a position of strength. The real re-rate feature for us is going to be one drill hole somewhere away from the current resource that shows we're potentially onto another Wallilan, and we probably add 10 to 15 cents overnight. And the one rig we've got there is eminently capable of drilling the holes we want on these regional targets, which I suppose rolls into the next question. One rig operating, and look, that rig will spend its time for the next couple of months drilling some of these high grade targets at depth and extending the resource. And then really that rig is designed to go drill these regional targets after we've got the assays back from all the rock chips and soils, and we've got to the point where we can accurately target some of these targets away from Wallilan. What's the probability of discovering another Wallilan? Look, best place to find a mine is near a mine. There's 25 kilometers of untested strike. There'll be another one there, but it's exploration. Do I think we'll find it? Yes, it might take some time, and hopefully we're still here when it is discovered, but there'll be another Wallilan there. You don't find 3 million ounces by itself. Question 5, what's the current and projected quarterly cash burn rate? And based on our cash position, what goals of significance can we achieve with these funds? So, quarterly is not due for a month. We'll run into the end of March 31. We'll have just over 8 million cash. With one rig going in Wallilan, your burn is down to sort of 3.5 million maybe this quarter, because we've got a little bit of the Ecuador drilling for the last few weeks that goes in there. So we've got a 7 to 8 months runway. That gets us a first resource in Ecuador. It gets us a scoping study in Wallilan. It gets us a real good look at drilling, most of these exciting regional targets in Wallilan. So, we've got 3 events there that all are potential re-rating events. An update in Ecuador. So, at the moment in Ecuador, we lost one of the rigs about 10 days ago. The current rig is finishing up last hole now and should be finished in another day. So, we've stuck to that. All in all, finished March 31. Number of rigs, timing for that first resource, it'll be May, sometime during May. What achievements are required at Ecuador to add value? Look, I think this first resource goes a long way to doing it, so long as it's got that high grade core in there. And I think demonstrates that, this will be based on 2 of 7 anomalies. Those 7 anomalies combined hopefully give us something similar to Cangrejos. So I think if this first resource can show we're on track for that, then I think all of a sudden we'll get some value. And again, look, if we don't, we'll actually do something that will realize value for Ecuador. It costs us a couple of $1 million a year to hold it. We won't be owning it past the end of this year if we don't get some value for it. What size of resource do we think Ecuador will end up with? I'd love to answer that, but I can't. Whatever I say a big number and we don't meet it. I say a small number and people are disappointed. The number will be what the number will be, and we haven't had first look at what it looks like yet. But I'm pretty confident that high grade hangs together when you look at the sections. Geological aspects to progress Ecuador. Again, we've been through that one. It's really got to pay its way, and if it doesn't, we'll do something that gets value. Explain what achievements are required at Wallilan to transition to mining and refining, and estimated capex. So at the moment we're doing a scoping. Aim will be to finish that middle of the year, roll straight into a pre-feas, or potentially direct to a bankable feasibility study. That bankable feasibility study will take 12 months. You've then got basically probably 6 to 12 months of financing and project construction. In terms of overall capex, probably the best analog to look at is Lindero. That's at altitude, it's a 5 to 6 million tonne per annum operation. Overall capex for that was 330 million US. Now, we're not going to build Wallilan that way. They didn't have that high grade core of 1.5 million ounces at 5. The aim for us will be start at 1 million tonnes per annum and then scale up out of cash flow. And, I think a 1 million tonne per annum plant, generally most places in the world, you can do it for under 150 million US. Long-term strategy for both projects. Do we develop or farm them out? Look, we're going down the path of developing Argentina. We've run a search, which is right at the back end, for someone who's quite capable of building and operating Wallilan. That same person will then have input in Ecuador as well. Do I want to go out and build Ecuador right now? No, I don't. It'll be $1 billion capex, but it looks different when you're in production in Argentina. Will I farm Ecuador out? Look, we've had a bunch of approaches, but no, we won't. I mean, the day that I farm a major into Ecuador, we're left there with 20 to 30%. There's only one buyer, and we're a hostage to their timetable. You basically destroy value. Is there any takeover interest? Look, we do get approaches from time to time. I have not let anyone into the data room, and we've had some approaches recently. I think we need to get a scoping study out to market, and then, we'll see what the market does. So I might sort of take us off screen share and pass back over to Jane. And if we've had any other questions, then Jane can sort of work through them.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Look, we've had a couple of questions just on Karoo. So has there been any movement on Karoo, or does it still remain a wildcard asset?
Still a wild card. I mean, look, it's there. It's a real asset. It doesn't cost a lot. It costs us a couple of $1,000s a year. That's it. The South African government is still working through their legislation. We're not going to get rid of it, because if it ever does get awarded, there's some real value. I know that Challenger, before we were involved, had $100 million farm out on the table. And, shale gas is more attractive now than it was, particularly in Africa. So, look, no real movement. It doesn't cost us anything, and hopefully one day it gets awarded and it doesn't fit with Challenger anymore. We'll do something to get value for shareholders. Actually, we've got one more, have we, about altitude? So look, are we at altitude? No. So we're 1,000 meters above sea level in Argentina. We're probably the only project or development project in Argentina that's not affected by the glacial law and not affected by the new watercourse law. You can work all year round. Rain's there a couple of days a week. We've got a double lane sealed highway to site from the equivalent of being 100 k's out of Kalgoorlie. And Ecuador, same thing. We're coastal. We're at about 11 or 1,200 meters above sea level. The only sort of negative is in winter you get fog, so you basically either stay in the property at night or you got to leave by 3 o'clock to drive that sort of 5 k's out. But no, not at altitude in either project.
Wonderful. I think that is actually all the questions we have for today. And if you've missed any questions, please feel free to reach out by the contact details on the bottom of our ASX releases. But thank you all for joining us today.
And thanks very much for hosting, Jane. Appreciate it.